Imagine a smoke-filled backstage corridor in the late 1980s.
Van Morrison stands motionless, sharp-eyed, and unimpressed as the audience outside roars for Bruce Springsteen, the so-called working-class hero. These two musical titans lived in the same time period, on the same stages, and even had the same audience for many years. But there was a darker side to admiration behind you.
Quietly simmering in the background of rock history was attention.
Fans were shocked by what Morrison revealed about Springsteen when he finally opened up today.
Morrison was talking about more than simply artistic competition.
It was a portrayal of Springsteen that revealed the fissures beneath the all-American persona by stripping away the myth. We must go back in time to the period that made Bruce a legend and the controversies that hung over him like a dark cloud in order to comprehend how things got to this point.
Bruce Springsteen emerged from New Jersey's boardwalk bars in the 1970s.
He was portrayed as a voice for the voiceless in his albums Born to Run and Darkness on the Edge of Town. But everything changed with success. Whispers started behind the curtain. Springsteen was no longer a common folk poet. He was now controlling, demanding, and perfection-obsessed. Members of the band grumbled that they didn't get any sleep during the long days spent in the studio. According to East Street Band sources, Bruce would record the same guitar riff hundreds of times until it became comfortable for him. The phony modesty was too much for Van Morrison, who was renowned for his spiritual depth and unyielding independence. He previously characterized Springsteen as a man who lived behind an iron curtain of self-image while preaching truthfulness.
And he wasn't the only one who held that opinion.
Tensions between Bruce and other members of the industry as well as between Morrison and Springsteen simmered throughout the 1980s. He apparently had a disagreement with Tom Petty about creative supremacy because of a charity partnership.
Even Springsteen's idol, Bob Dylan, shunned him because he thought Bruce was making too much effort to become the next American voice.
When Springsteen started discussing social and political concerns in public, things got worse. He received a lot of accolades, but some in the rock world thought it was disingenuous. Morrison viewed Springsteen's involvement as performance art intended to enhance his image rather than his message, as he had avoided politics in his lyrics for years. Morrison thought that the media ignored his own modest genius while treating Bruce like a savior, which intensified their animosity.
Because I was a surfer when I was younger, the shark used to be the most terrifying animal. However, a brown recluse spider has bitten me multiple times.
Bruce Springsteen fought demons that few people ever saw behind his public victories. Depression crept in between anchors and interviews, haunting him like a ghost in every room. Even though stadiums roared his name during the height of his success, he frequently returned to dressing rooms filled with fear and silence. Later, the same man who appeared to be unstoppable on stage would give up and become incapable of facing anything, not even his guitar. He acknowledged years of therapy and medication in his book, but those closest to him described something more terrifying.
Mood swings so intense they broke the peace.
Nights, moments of seclusion during which Bruce disappeared into himself for days, and eruptions that made loved ones shudder. It was astounding how the bright lights of the arena contrasted with the blackness within him. He sang about redemption and hope, yet he battled his own mental burden every night. His friends described him pacing restlessly, absorbed in his thoughts, searching for the purpose that fame had somehow taken away from him.
Julianne Phillips, an actress, was the victim of his first marriage during that conflict.
Once a publicity dream, their union fell apart behind closed doors due to the pressures of distance, silence, and betrayal. The flames was only stoked by rumors of adultery. A fresh beginning and a new scandal came when Bruce turned to backing singer Patti Shala for comfort. Before his marriage was formally dissolved, they started dating, which led to headlines that damaged his carefully constructed reputation.
He was portrayed as a fallen idol by the tabloids, which devoured every detail.
A drama of desire, remorse, and moral disintegration replaced the tale of America's honest working hero. The fall from grace was harsh for a man who had sang of salvation. Between the man and the myth, between the roaring stage and the eerie silence that ensued, there was a live contradiction. Bruce's musical family was the East Street Band, but ambition may cause even families to fall apart. Imagine spending long evenings in the studio, where tiredness and cigarette smoke filled the air, and Bruce's voice was like a whip. His brother-in-arms since the beginning, guitarist Steven Van Zandt, became tired of the oppressive control and the never-ending takes.
What started off as friendship deteriorated into subdued animosity until Van Zandt eventually left in the 1980s, exhausted and dejected. Others in the East Street Circle whispered about Bruce's strict control. As a commander rather than a leader, he demanded perfection. Danny Federici, the keyboardist, and Max Weinberg, the drummer, frequently spent late nights and early mornings pursuing the sound that only Bruce could perceive in his mind. They feared his anger when things went wrong, but they also appreciated his brilliance. In an instant, the same man who sung about brotherhood and commitment could shut people out entirely. This was frequently used by Morrison as evidence of Springsteen's double existence. A man who lived in contradiction while singing about unification. He could make his own band feel alienated while packing a stadium with songs about belonging. The ghosts of past conflicts were drowned out by the applause when the East Street Band got back together in the late 1990s, but they never truly vanished. The underlying reality that certain wounds never heal, even in the presence of intense stage lighting, and that the sound of applause cannot stop the echo of what was lost, lay behind every victorious encore. Springsteen became a worldwide icon over time. In jeans, sweat, and blue-collar poetry, he will always be a man of the people. However, there was a much more complex reality hidden behind that tough smile and the appearance of modest bravery. Bruce's world off stage was one of dominance and strategy. He surrounded himself with managers, publicists, and image consultants who made sure that every performance, every picture, and every word fit the boss's myth. What had been unvarnished honesty became to seem like a staged performance. According to Van Morrison, this change represented rock's rebellious spirit's final betrayal. He believed that Springsteen had exchanged authenticity for showmanship. The rolled-up sleeves and denim jacket were no longer emblems of the struggle of the working class. They served as props to maintain the myth. Bruce appeared to become more entangled in the machinery of fame, while Morrison persisted in protecting his artistic integrity. He didn't seem to be the same man who used to sing about escaping everything as his image expanded. Consider the middle of the 2000s. Springsteen at charity functions, political rallies, and magazine covers. His speech now echoed the establishment that he had previously professed to oppose. Reputation was now more important than rebellion. Insiders described how every aspect of his public character was meticulously handled. When to grin, what to say, and how to move. Bruce was still seen by his admirers as the everyday hero. However, he had become an executive of his own mythology in the eyes of those who knew him. That internal conflict was evident in his personal life as well. A picture of a man engrossed in the ID he had created was painted by rumors of control problems at home, confrontations with Patty during tours, and times when Bruce turned himself off entirely. Every year, the distance between Bruce Springsteen, the icon, and Bruce, the person, widened. Fans also started to notice. There were rumors of his severing relationships with lifelong friends who didn't agree with him, of heated arguments over creative direction with record executives, and of musicians quitting sessions because of his perfectionist tendencies. Morrison's revelations simply confirmed the suspicions of many. The man who wrote so fervently about freedom and truth had become imprisoned by industry norms and emotional barriers. It became impossible to overlook the paradox. Authenticity and artifice have become a delicate balance in Springsteen's life. The contrast was overwhelming as he sung of freedom while bearing the burden of his own image. Van Morrison viewed this paradox, the growing gap between the myth and the man, as both tragic and unavoidable, the cost of transforming revolt into mythology. The mystique of Bruce Springsteen started to crumble under the pressure of its own expectations as the years went by. Imagine this. A man who was once praised as the voice of working America is now facing his own contradictions. The applause that had once encouraged him began to reverberate in a different way, serving as a reminder of everything he had lost. Nothing fresh was hurt by Van Morrison's recent remarks. They revealed a truth that had been hidden beneath the acclaim and recognition for a long time. Springsteen's offstage life has become more complicated. Long silences and a man who struggled continuously with his image, caught between control and humility, were described by friends. Even those closest to him were shut out during times when he utterly withdrew. The melancholy that used to linger in the background of his songs had become an indisputable aspect of his life. Nevertheless, he kept performing night after night, concealing the chaos beneath grit, perspiration, and dazzling stage lights. There was no hostility in Van Morrison's criticism. Disillusionment, the kind that results from seeing an artist lose touch with the essence that formerly characterized him, was reflected in it. For Morrison, Springsteen was no longer a man but an empire. Every public presentation appeared to have been practiced. Each statement was filtered. Now he packaged, marketed, and sold the unadulterated, wild fire that had made him legendary. Fans also started to notice the change. The man who used to sing of honesty and freedom seemed to be stuck inside his own myth. The disputes, the scandals, the strained bonds. These weren't individual instances, rather, they were parts of a bigger narrative about a man struggling with the boss persona's shadow. Questions about how much of Springsteen's life had been staged and how much was real were rekindled by Morrison's disclosures. Ultimately, the conflict between these two emblems came to represent the collision of two distinct rock visions. Springsteen, the legendary dream builder whose creation had devoured him, and Morrison, the obstinate purist who clung to soul and truth. Bruce is now viewed by the world as a very human person who possesses both genius and burden, rather than as an untouchable hero. Thus, the legend endures while being damaged and rocked. Because despite his imperfections, Bruce Springsteen continues to serve as a role model for any artist who dares to strive for greatness and loses a piece of themselves in the process. The narrative did not end with Morrison's remarks. They merely served as a reminder that there is a man still struggling to find his path behind every anthem.